Hi, everybody. Welcome to our LinkedIn Live on H-1B CAP registrations. We're discussing strategies for corporate immigration programs today. And the organizational accounts from USCIS are now live, and we wanted to report on the updates that we've been seeing so we can help you HR professionals have as smooth and H-1B registration season as possible. Just as a reminder, tune into our next LinkedIn Live next Wednesday, March 6th, when we will talk about additional updates as the registration window opens. So we've been following closely all the new developments this week, very closely. Kimberley, can you explain to us what the big hoopla is about all the stuff regarding the launch of organizational accounts?
Yeah, absolutely. So happy Friday, Miki, and glad we've survived February 28th. So the online organizational accounts that are replacing the legacy MyUSCIS accounts went live this past Wednesday, February 28th. So in past years, USCIS used the H-1B registrant system where one company contact would work with one legal representative to conduct the registrations. This year, USCIS upgraded their system to allow for multiple contacts at companies to collaborate with law firms. So the new system, the organizational accounts, is also designed to allow companies to file H-1B petitions where previously it was limited to only a handful of applications. But even if you will not be submitting an H-1B petition, you still need to create an organizational account to submit a lottery registration, right? So those organizational accounts are essential for the H-1B CAP registration process. So when launching this new system, the Immigration Service changed company contacts into different roles. So USCIS held several tech talks, which I know you joined, Miki, and gained a lot of knowledge from there. But because this system raised so many questions from lawyers and companies, USCIS kept adding additional tech talks. They were trying to figure out how to iron out some of the issues that company representatives and attorneys were kind of diagnosing as they were reading into the FAQs and the information that was released by the Immigration Service. So with this last minute changes and all the tech talks, there's been a lot of confusion with respect to the organizational accounts. So like I said, February 28th came and went. Our firm started the registration, or not the registrations, I take that back, creating the organizational accounts and collaborating with our clients as of February 28th, this past Wednesday. And we've run into some issues. So we're trying to work those out with our clients. Miki, what have you seen and what information can you provide?
Yeah. So I guess just to step back a little bit, logistically speaking, who's going to be administrator, how to set it up. If you had accounts last year that were live, how to deal with that. So logistically speaking, if you were a company contact who had an H-1B registration account from last year, and if you are now this year also authorized by your company to be a signatory for your registrations and future H-1 petitions, you would log into your online account and the system will just upgrade to the new platform automatically. In that case, then you're considered to be an administrator with, authorization, who has authorization to submit the registrations and can sign. Your attorney can then send you the invitation to link their account with your account. And then you would get that invitation via email. And then you would click into that email and then finish setting up the profile. If you were a company contact who wasn't a signatory last year and won't be this year, but you're going to just help with the registrations, then you would wait for your administrator to invite you as a team member to be added so that you could view the registrations and help coordinate those details. If your company didn't have an account from last year, but you are now the new contact who's authorized to sign for and submit the registration, then you would set up a new account. So, in theory, it's great that USCIS is trying to expand its technological capabilities, but we've just seen some headaches with this new system. What have you seen in the last few days, Kimberley?
So the system has been glitchy and experiencing some outages. We've also had situations where the company representatives have received system errors because the USCIS account was overwhelmed. In addition, company reps have been showing the attorney in their account after they've accepted an invitation. But then on our end, the company doesn't exist, even though we were the ones that created the company and sent the invitation out to the company representative. And then company representatives, as of today, are still receiving errors and not being able to accept an invitation. So those are some of the main issues that we're seeing with the organizational accounts that started this past Wednesday.
Yeah, so same on my end. And so yesterday we reached out to USCIS, the H-1B tech support by email, and they were pretty quick to respond. I think within the hour they emailed us back, which was helpful. It seems though that they are still, as you're mentioning, still working on some of the issues. But maybe they're gathering information on issues that people are seeing because of the tech support email that they have. One thing that we've been figuring out, through all of the information we got through the tech talks, but in practice, how does it all work? For companies, especially with multiple entities or subsidiaries, this is the part that I think is causing the most confusion for people. So USCIS has been saying that you can use the company profile for one company, basically, typically a parent company, to submit registrations for entities with different EIN. So you don't need to necessarily set up a separate, account for each entity like you had to last year. If one administrator is handling all of the entities, then you can submit a registration under that one umbrella entity. And in each beneficiary's registration, indicate which FEIN the registration is under. So that's a lot simpler. Once they work through all these glitches, hopefully that'll make everybody's lives easier. In past years when it was not this system, it mattered a lot which entity you registered the beneficiary under, because entering the same person under multiple related entities was prohibited. But now the emphasis is on the beneficiary. And if there are multiple entities and each entity has a different administrator, all those administrations can be placed in one company group and registrations can be under that one umbrella entity. So in that way, it should be, in theory, smoother. In another example, though, if your company has several offices that are under the same FEIN number and the company wants to use different contacts, for example, for different office locations or different departments, how you could handle that is in one of two ways. You could have, essentially one company group that encompasses all of the administrators. And thing to know about that is that in that situation where you're establishing one company group to encompass each of the administrators in the separate locations, separate offices or departments, then everybody can see each other's registrations. If that's fine, then that'll work for you. But if you need to somehow segment the population, the information in each of the registrations per entity, then you could set up an account for each administrator and not collaborate in a company group. Hope that makes sense. I know it's a little convoluted. Kimberley, what if in a company with multiple contacts, the administrator handling the H-1B registrations is different than the person who's going to ultimately sign for the selected H-1B that's filed by paper or online?
So, Miki, what we do know from the tech talks is that USCIS has confirmed that the signatory for the H-1B registration can be a different person than the signatory for the I-129 filing by paper or online. So that makes it much better in those situations where people are on vacation or they're taking on different roles in the process.
Awesome. Can you remind us, Kimberley, about the key registration dates?
Yeah, so the first day to file the registrations will be at 9 a.m. Pacific time, which is noon Eastern time on March 6th. The registration period will run until 9 a.m. Pacific time, which is noon Eastern time on March 22nd. So we have, about a 2-week period of time where the registrations may be submitted with the Immigration Service. does not matter when the registrations are submitted online, as long as they are submitted within the registration period. So for instance, if a registration is submitted on March 6th, it does not mean that it's going to have a higher likelihood of being selected in the lottery. Every registration is going to have the same likelihood of being selected in the lottery, with one exception, and that will be for individuals who have an advanced degree from a U.S. university, right? They can be placed in the bachelor's cap lottery as well as the advanced, which is we call the master's cap lottery. So they can have two bites of the at the apple, so to speak, but getting their registrations in early is not going to have any significant impact. So we're telling our clients and recommending that all of the registrations for a particular organization be filed together at the same time, rather than doing one group of 10 and then another group of 10, just in order to try to prevent any potential glitches or lags in the system or outages. It also is a way to have the situation for the beneficiaries where everybody is being submitted at the same time. So some people might not feel that their case is being submitted later, so they don't have as great of a selection rate, which isn't going to be the case. So leave ample time. You don't have to get your registrations in right on March 6th, but do get them in, before the deadline, and leave ample time to make sure that, you can address any potential glitches or system outages as we've experienced this week. So, Miki, what happens after March 22nd?
Yeah, so once the registration period closes on the 22nd, then the next milestone is the lottery selection. We expect the selections to be announced before March 29th. And, one thing that I think is making people anxious is the fact that the funding bill has not yet been signed, right, for the government. The House and the Senate just passed a temporary appropriations bill. I think it was yesterday, and the president is expected to confirm. But it's a really temporary measure. The funding is now just going to be extended by a couple of weeks. And it will be set to expire March 8th for a few of the agencies. And for the Department of Labor, it will be March 22nd. So that's something to keep in mind, and we will address that further in our next LinkedIn Live. But do know that even if the government partially or fully shuts down, USCIS is not impacted. So the registration process should not be impacted because USCIS is fee funded. One of the key differences I wanted to make sure we address is the fact that the system is going to be beneficiary centric, and that's a main difference from past years. Kimberley, can you tell us what that means?
Yeah, so what that means is that employers, in this case this year, multiple employers may submit registrations for the same beneficiary. And for the USCIS to, in essence, track that multiple registrations are not submitted multiple times for the same beneficiary, and I'll explain that a little bit better because it's weird, multiple. But what we're seeing is that you can have company A, B, and C all submit a registration for the same beneficiary, right? And what the Immigration Service is requiring is that we include in the registration the passport or travel document number and the expiration date. The document that is being submitted in the or being addressed in the registration has to be valid, and only the same passport or travel document can be used for each registration that's submitted by each company on behalf of the same beneficiary. So that's an important distinction this year, is that the beneficiary's information has to be consistent with all registrations submitted by different companies.
So if a beneficiary has multiple companies register for them, would that increase the selection rate at all?
It's not going to increase the selection rate, with that one exception that I mentioned, which is if someone has an advanced degree from a U.S. university, they essentially have two bites at the apple, but only that one registration. So the registration selection is going to be based on the beneficiary, which is unique this year. That will be based specifically on the beneficiary. And that's what we're going to look forward to in anticipation of what's happening in the lottery.
So for our HR people who, are entering their employees or prospective candidates, will they know which people that they entered will have double or triple registrations with different entities?
So unless a beneficiary is duplicated by the same organization, and there are ways in the system to make sure that there are not duplicate entries submitted by the same organization for the same individual. Employers and us attorneys have no way to know if a beneficiary has been registered by multiple entities. So that would be something that only the beneficiary would know. So one of the things that we're doing is that we're making sure within our organizations that duplicate entries aren't submitted for the same beneficiary, but we don't know if there's going to be another organization filing for that same beneficiary.
Yeah, so the beneficiary could be kind of negotiating with multiple companies unbeknownst to the HR professional, right?
That's correct. Absolutely.
Yeah. So what happens then if someone who has, for example, 3 different employers enter them into the lottery and the person's selected? How does that play out?
So if the individual beneficiary is selected, all 3 employers will receive the selection notice, right? They won't know that the selection notice was sent to another organization. So that's one of the areas that is, a little gray, right? Because now the beneficiary knows that they've been selected and they have the option to join one of 3 companies, right? If they had 3 companies that submitted the registration, all 3 entities will be able to file an H-1B petition on behalf of that individual. And as long as the petition remains valid and obviously has been approved, then the individual could potentially work at any of those organizations going forward.
Yeah, so that could result in some awkward conversations, and it's key for HR to be in close communication with the beneficiaries, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah, something I wanted to flag too is that for this year's registration, the system requires not only the beneficiary's passport number, which is the same as last year, but now the expiration date has to be entered too. The expiration date is important because the beneficiaries have to have a valid passport or alternatively a travel document that's valid at the time of registration. Kimberly, can you talk a little bit about what happens if the passport's valid at the time of registration, but will expire before the April 1st filing window or before the H-1 petition is submitted?
Yeah, sure. So there might be situations where between the time of submitting a registration and when an H-1B petition is filed with the Immigration Service, that an individual has a name change, or they have a change in gender identification, or a change in their passport number, either because their passport was lost or stolen and they had to obtain a replacement, or they obtained a renewal of their passport because it was expiring at the end of March or April, say. In those situations, USCIS has said that they're going to use their discretion in permitting evidence of a different passport or travel document submitted at the time of filing an H-1B petition than what was submitted at the registration time. It's really crucial that when filing the H-1B petition, the information is disclosed to the Immigration Service so that it is clear that this beneficiary was not trying to game the system, that it is in fact one beneficiary who had submitted the same travel document number with multiple employers, but has now obtained a different or extended document. So in filing the H-1B petitions, that information would be disclosed, including copies of the documents in order to show that it is in fact the same person.
Gotcha. Thanks, Kimberly. So main takeaway here is, I guess, we have to pay attention. The HR has to pay attention to the beneficiary's passport expiration date. And we're pulling that for our clients on our reports so that we can monitor and advise accordingly. All right. So any last tips as we gear up for the actual registration window next week?
So it's a very stressful time, right? The cap lottery has been incredibly stressful for many, many years, as you and I have experienced. And one thing that we all have found here at WR is that it's really important for communication. So we've been communicating with the beneficiaries to let them know and remind them when the cap registration period is. Because I know some people mistakenly think that it starts March 1st, but it doesn't. It starts March 6th. So it's keeping that communication up to the beneficiaries and to our corporate clients to let them know that we're on top of the registration period, and that if anything in addition is needed before submitting a registration, we will definitely reach out to make sure that we get everything timely filed. And, just good luck to everyone.
Yeah, thanks. I think communication, like you say, is key so that beneficiaries can actually focus on their normal work and not be so, stressed out by the registration. And is my attorney taking care of this? Is my HR taking care of this? So it's good to keep the communication active. Thanks to everybody for tuning in today, and join us for our next session next Wednesday for any more updates as USCIS hopefully irons out their remaining issues and resolves the glitches. If you have any questions, please post in the comment or send us a direct message. And if you don't already follow us, please follow us on our LinkedIn page for Kimberley and my profile, and also for WR Immigration's profile. See you next week.
Great. See you, everybody.
Thanks, Kimberley.